yeah, everybody's like it's getting cutthroat out here. People are robbing each other, stealing from one another. You know, instead of helping each other out, we're doing the exact opposite and kicking somebody when they're down, just like us.
Ever hear someone suggest sending America's homeless out to places like the Mojave Desert, the Alaskan wilderness, or some remote Pacific island? On the surface, it sounds like it might work. After all, the U.S. has plenty of empty land, and with 771,000 people living without homes in 2024, it's easy to see why the idea pops up. But would it really solve anything? Or would it just fail, masking the real problem? What do you think? Could this actually work, or is it a dead end? Share your thoughts below, and let's figure out what's best for our communities. America is huge, and nearly half of it is almost completely empty. According to the 2020 census, vast stretches where spotting another person is rare. Think of the Mojave Desert, spreading across California and Nevada, 124,000 square kilometers of sand and rock, scorching in summer and freezing in winter. Or Alaska's Tongass National Forest, a rainforest so isolated that fewer than one person per square kilometer calls it home, with cities hundreds of miles away. Then there's Howland Island in the Pacific, a tiny speck with no fresh water, used only for research or military purposes. And don't forget the frontier areas of Nevada, Wyoming, and Montana, where you can drive for hours and see nothing but sagebrush and open sky. At first glance, these lands might seem like blank slates. With so much under federal control, 28% of the U.S. managed by the Bureau of Land Management or National Park Service, it's tempting to think, why not use it to address homelessness? The idea has a certain appeal. Clear the streets of encampments, make cities look cleaner, and give people a fresh start somewhere new. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. These lands aren't empty because they're waiting for people. They're empty because they're harsh, unforgiving, and missing the basics humans need: water, electricity, healthcare, jobs, to survive, let alone thrive. Take the Mojave. It's not just hot, it's deadly without water, which is scarce. Past attempts to set up temporary camps there, like in Nevada during the 2010 seconds, ended tragically with people succumbing to heat stroke or dehydration. Alaska's Tongass isn't any easier. Sub-zero winters and extreme isolation make it a logistical nightmare. And those Pacific islands? They're so remote even the military rarely uses them. These lands are protected for a reason: environmental conservation, wildlife, national security, and turning them into settlements would require massive, costly changes. So before anyone even talks about moving people there, the question remains, Is it even possible to live in these places, especially for folks already struggling to survive? Let's be honest. The idea of sending the homeless to far-off places like the Mojave Desert or Wyoming's wide-open frontier can sound like a quick fix, especially if you're tired of seeing tent cities crowding Los Angeles or Seattle. Homelessness in cities is raw, visible, and politically charged. Officials face constant pressure to do something, and moving people out of sight feels like an easy win. With millions of acres of federal land sitting unused, it's easy to think, why not put it to work? This isn't a new thought. Take Greyhound therapy, for example. Between 2017 and 2024, San Francisco spent millions on bus tickets, sending about 15,000 homeless people to other towns. The logic seems simple. Clear out downtown, and the problem disappears. But that's where it falls apart. Those bus programs barely worked. Only about 20% stayed where they were sent. Most drifted back, often worse off than before. Why? Because a new address doesn't solve the root causes of homelessness. The National Alliance to End Homelessness points to a shortage of 7 million affordable homes, skyrocketing rents, and mental health or addiction struggles affecting 30–50% of homeless people. Those problems don't vanish just by moving somewhere new. Remote areas like the Mojave or Wyoming's frontier offer no jobs, no doctors, not even a corner store. You end up in a harsh, empty landscape with no water, no shelter, and no way to make a living. That's not a fresh start. It's being abandoned. Then there's the cost, and it's huge. Building water lines, power grids, or clinics in these remote spots could run into billions. By comparison, setting up one permanent supportive housing unit in a city costs $150,000, $300,000. Out in the desert or forest, where every nail and pipe must be trucked in for hundreds of miles, the price could easily double or triple. Meanwhile, programs like Housing First, which cut Houston's homelessness by 63% since 2011, prove what actually works for far less money. Sending people to the middle of nowhere isn't just impractical. It's throwing money at a problem instead of solving it. And it begs a hard question. What does it say about us if we'd rather hide people than help them where they already live? Let's imagine, just for a moment, that the government decides to go all in on this plan. Picture a policy where homeless people are rounded up and sent to camps in the Mojave, Alaska, or some remote Pacific island. What would happen? Let's break it down, looking at the short term, 2025, 2027, and the longer term, 2028, 2030, based on history, policy trends, and human behavior. Short-term chaos, 2025, 2027. In the next couple of years, we might see small-scale experiments. States like Nevada or Arizona, where conservative leaders favor tough measures on homelessness, could try setting up camps in deserts or rural Wyoming clearing. But the outcome would likely be grim. Without water, electricity, or medical care, these places would quickly become death traps. Back in the 2010 seconds, Nevada tried similar makeshift camps, and people died from heat stroke and dehydration. The same tragedy would repeat here, especially for the 30–50% of homeless people struggling with mental illness or addiction who need regular care, not isolation. The backlash would be immediate. Local communities like Native American tribes near federal lands would fight back, worried about resources and land rights. In 2018, Orange County, California faced protests when it tried moving homeless people to a coastal site, not even that remote, and residents cried foul over safety and property values. Now, imagine trying this in the middle of nowhere. Advocacy groups like the ACLU and the National Alliance to End Homelessness would file lawsuits arguing that forcing people into unlivable conditions violates the Constitution, specifically the Eighth Amendment's ban on cruel and unusual punishment. The 2024 Supreme Court ruling in Grants Pass versus Johnson allows cities to fine people for sleeping outside, but only if a shelter alternative exists. A desert camp with no water? That's not a shelter. It's a sentence.
It must be
Politically, this would be a lightning rod. Under a Trump administration, which pushed for clearing encampments through executive orders in 2025, there might be some initial support for tough measures. But even then, going all in on banishment would be risky, given the legal challenges and public backlash. More likely, we'd see extensions of what's already been tried, programs like Greyhound therapy, where cities offer bus tickets to send people elsewhere, often back to family. Those programs work only about 15–20% of the time, and participation is voluntary, forcing thousands into remote wastelands. That's a whole different story. It would spark protests, media outrage, and possibly civil unrest. People aren't livestock. They won't simply comply. Long-term failure, 2028, 2030. Looking further ahead, this idea would almost certainly collapse under its own weight. By 2028, legal battles would be overwhelming. The Housing Not Handcuffs Act of 2025 already bans criminalizing homelessness without offering housing alternatives, and courts would likely strike down any forced relocations as unconstitutional. Internationally, groups like UN Habitat would condemn the US for human rights violations, damaging our global reputation. The costs would be another deal breaker. Building settlements in remote areas could run into the billions, far more than the $100 billion a year needed to fund affordable housing nationwide, according to the National Alliance to End Homelessness. Why spend more and get worse results? By 2030, the focus would likely return to proven strategies. Cities like Houston, which cut homelessness by 63% through Housing First, show that stable homes and support make a real difference. Investing in programs like this could reduce homelessness nationwide by 20–30%. But relying on half measures or gimmicks like remote camps would only worsen the crisis, with projections reaching 900,000 homeless people by 2030. The lesson is clear. Pushing people out of sight doesn't solve anything. It just moves the suffering elsewhere. The question we must ask ourselves is, do we want to be a society that hides its problems or one that faces them head on? Let's be honest. The idea of moving homeless people to desolate places like the Mojave Desert or Alaska's Tongass Forest might sound like a simple solution, but it's a fragile plan that falls apart under scrutiny. Practical challenges, legal hurdles, and moral questions make this approach not only unworkable, but deeply flawed. Let's examine these obstacles one by one and consider what they say about the values of a society striving to do right. Start with the practical realities. Deserts, dense forests, or isolated islands aren't ready for human life. They lack the basics: clean water, electricity, medical care, or jobs. In the Mojave, summer heat can hit 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and water is as scarce as hope during a heated election. The Tongass? Its freezing winters and distance from any hospital make it a logistical nightmare. Past efforts, like Nevada's short-lived desert camps in the 2010 seconds, ended tragically, with people succumbing to heat and dehydration. Many homeless people, 30–50% by HUD estimates, struggle with mental health issues or addiction, needing regular support like therapy or rehab, not a ticket to a barren wilderness. Building the infrastructure needed, roads, clinics, power lines, would cost billions. A single supportive housing unit in a city costs $150,000, $300,000. Out in the middle of nowhere, hauling materials across hundreds of miles could triple that cost. Why pour billions into a plan that sets people up to fail when proven models like Housing First, which cut Houston's homelessness by 63% since 2011, cost less and actually work? Does it make sense to spend so much just to make life harder for people who are already struggling? Now, let's talk about the law, and it's a tough road. Most of these lands are federal, tightly controlled by agencies like the Bureau of Land Management or the National Park Service. You can't just build settlements without permits, and good luck getting approval for a mass relocation. The Homestead Act, which once handed out land, has been gone since the 1932nd. Forcing people into harsh, unlivable conditions could also violate constitutional protections. The 2024 Grants Pass versus Johnson ruling allows cities to penalize outdoor sleeping, but only if shelter alternatives exist. A barren camp with no food or water? That's not a shelter, it's cruelty, potentially violating the Eighth Amendment. The 2025 Housing Not Handcuffs Act bans punishing homelessness without providing housing. Attempt this plan, and groups like the ACLU would flood the courts with lawsuits, delaying it for years. Morally, this idea stings. It's not about helping, it's about erasing the homeless from sight, sending the message, we don't want you here, so disappear. It ignores the real problems: skyrocketing rents, a shortage of 7 million affordable homes, and untreated mental health or addiction struggles. Past attempts, like San Francisco's Greyhound Therapy that relocated 15,000 people from 2017 to 2024, failed. 80% returned, often in worse condition. A new location doesn't fix a broken life.
Damn, the overdose was...
Globally, the U.S. would face condemnation. UN Habitat would call this a human rights violation, stripping people of dignity. Socially, pushback would be fierce. In 2018, Orange County residents protested a semi-rural homeless site, citing safety and property concerns. In truly remote areas, local towns or native tribes would resist. And the homeless themselves, they would push back, sparking protests or worse. This isn't a solution, it's a spark for division and distrust. The real question is, what kind of community do we want to be? One that banishes people or one that lifts them up? So, if shipping people off to remote deserts or forests is a dead end, what's the better path? The good news is that there are approaches that actually work, ways to lift people up with dignity instead of pushing them out of sight. Let's walk through them, like friends tackling a tough problem together, and see why they deserve support. First up is Housing First, a strategy that's proven highly effective in cities like Houston. The idea is simple. Give someone a stable home, then layer on support such as counseling, addiction recovery, or job training. Since 2011, Houston has cut homelessness by 63% using this method, spending roughly $150,000 per home, a fraction of the billions it would take to build far-off camps. It works because a home is the foundation. Without it, getting your life back on track is nearly impossible. Data shows that cities using this approach can reduce homelessness by 20–30%, and it's cost-effective, far cheaper than the $40,000 per person spent each year on emergency room visits or jail. Then there's the housing crunch. We're short 7 million affordable homes for low-income Americans, according to the National Alliance to End Homelessness. In some cities, rents have jumped 30% since 2019, while wages barely budged. Programs like the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit could help close the gap, but they need more funding. Pouring $100 billion a year into this, as experts recommend, could shrink the crisis significantly. It's a big number, but far more effective than building settlements in the middle of nowhere. Healthcare is another critical piece. Roughly 30–50% of homeless people struggle with mental health issues or addiction. Expanding Medicaid and opening more treatment centers could be transformative. Right now, too many end up in emergency rooms or behind bars, simply because help isn't accessible. California spent $3 billion on homeless programs in 2023, yet barely scratched the surface on mental health support. Redirecting funds to therapists and clinics would achieve far more than any remote wilderness camp ever could. Finally, consider tiny homes near cities, not lost in the wild. Austin, Texas, has built small, affordable villages with access to doctors and job training, cutting homelessness by 15% since 2019. They're not perfect, but they're humane and achievable. So why aren't we investing more in these proven solutions? Let's talk about it. What's holding us back from doing what actually works? Conclusion. The idea of sending homeless people to remote lands might sound bold, but it's really a mirage, a costly, cruel distraction from solutions that actually work. It overlooks the harsh realities of unlivable landscapes, the legal protections of constitutional rights, and our moral duty to treat people with dignity. Instead of pushing neighbors out of sight, we should invest in housing first. Affordable housing, healthcare, and community-based solutions like tiny home villages. These aren't just policies. They reflect who we are as a society. Let's choose compassion over convenience, real solutions over shortcuts. What do you think is the best way to tackle homelessness in America? Share your thoughts below. Your voice matters in shaping a better future.